So you want to know the reason for the migrant situation? You want to know the reason why people are overly supporting the opposition versus who's in leadership now? Do you want to know the reason why everybody is getting away from the dollar? That's a lot thrown at you in just one little snippet of this video. But we're going to talk about just that today. 5 things that we need to be looking at that deals with your money. It deals with the fact of your safety and security, but it also deals with the fact of why we're seeing a huge jump with the former president. And now we're back to where we were in 2020. Now, what am I talking about? Let's jump into it today. This video starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Again, you've got the truck as your background. So sorry, as you can tell, it is nasty outside. We've had a ton of moisture and rains, and now we are just overcast, and so the camera just cannot make it in this weather. So you're stuck in the truck with me today, so sorry about that. You can't see the pretty animals. If you're new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe. It's like right here, but there's also a thumbs up button right next to it. If you like this content, please give us a thumbs up. We humbly thank you for that. Also, comment below what your thoughts are on this video, but not only that, the stories that we're going to be discussing. We're going to jump into 5 stories real quick. I want you to understand where we're at on some of these and maybe some of the ramifications of these policies. And now we're seeing that's why Trump is taking a monster lead in this election. So a lot's going to transpire, I think, over the next coming months because we're in a major election year. Super Tuesday was yesterday. There was a lot of fallout from that. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but let's jump into these headlines right quick. First and foremost, we are now seeing the migrant issue happen because of one major place and one major player. We tend to lean towards the fact the Biden administration has lax policies. We know that. We're going to do a whole detailed video on some of the policies they've laxed very, very soon. But one place that always comes up is the Darien Gap. There are basically 4 or 5 different little camps going from basically our southern border all the way down into South America. Now, the question is, why are those set up? Who's funding those to be set up? And now we see a lot of this migrant issues happening all throughout the pathway to then get to us. Well, the Darien Gap. And there's 4 to 5 migrant camps that Epic Times have went in, and they've done stories on them, so you could go back and do a little research there. But guess who set these camps up? The UN. The UN is the one that's really attracting people to these camps. Now, these camps are overly infested with disease. They're overly infested with crime. They're overly infested with bad things happening. And the ones that are funding it is basically us through the UN, but the UN is absolutely funding this situation. Why are we not bringing more attention to it? Why are we all of a sudden still supporting the UN when the UN is literally the one deteriorating our southern border? Now, the sad thing is, if you look at what some of these migrants are coming from and where they're going, it's sad. It breaks my heart to see these children and these elder individuals that are coming up to our border. Yes, we should have compassion. Sadly, our own global governments, such as like the UN and some of these big players, are the ones that's causing this to happen. They believe that the Americas will have compassion and bring these people in. It's all a big ploy to make just mass migration. But the problem goes back to the U.S. has got to step away from the UN. The U.S. has got to kick the UN out of America. We should not even be a part of it, because what's happening is they're the reason that we're seeing this massive influx. Because the stories show that the people that are in these migrant camps, it's not just South American people. It's not just the people from Mexico. It's literally people from all over the world that the UN has brought there. The UN is allowing to help get to our southern border. So our problem is not just with the Biden administration. Our problem is not just with, Mexico. The problem actually goes back to something bigger. The globalist push for mass migration. Mass migration causes for less freedom. Look at the studies. Since 2019, the amount of freedom has been lost tremendously based on the fact of massive migrations moving. What happens is then governments have to crack down because of all the problems that the mass migration has caused across Europe, even across South America, into America. It's playing right into the globalist hands of saying we need one global government over this mass problem. The problem is all UN, and we have to get to the bottom of that. And that means U.S. has to defund UN and kick UN out of America. That's bold, but that's what I believe. I believe the UN is the root problem of the Darien Gap, the root problem of all these people having theft and thievery and crime caused through this mass migration move through Mexico, through Panama, through South America. It all goes back to stemming from the UN. Now, second story, I think this is why we're seeing this. There's been record numbers of veterans homeless. This is the biggest year of escalation of homeless veterans. Now, you know what the root cause of that is? They're not being able to get the help from America and from other groups. Guess where that help is going? To the mass migrant situation in these cities. So, therefore, I don't want anyone on the street. We don't like homeless on the street. We understand that. Now, I know a lot of that's caused by a lot of problems that they cause for themselves in some situations. However, as I told you yesterday's video, we've got 8 million people that are living here freely based on our tax dollars. Well, to be honest with you, if I'm going to have to pay taxes, don't you think I should want it to go to the people that gave us freedom, such as veterans? Don't you think I want it to go to the American citizens and not the people that are coming across the border that the UN is basically funneling in for mass migration and for basically causing us less freedom? So we have seen an escalation to a point of no return, they're saying, for veterans on the streets. We're kicking people out of these places while allowing a great replacement to move in and basically take their beds, take their care, take all the benefits that we were giving to people who needed help, and now we're putting them on the streets. Don't you think that's going to cause for more problems on the streets? Don't you think that's going to cause for more chaos? Not only just because of the mass migrant coming in, but the fact now you're putting more people on the streets that need the help that are American citizens. The problem with homelessness has went up, but veterans homelessness has pretty much been steady. A lot of veterans are homeless. But listen to this. Homelessness among U.S. veterans has risen dramatically, first time in 12 years. The reason being is that the national, state, and local governments continue to spend billions of dollars to house, feed, and clothe and give medical care to illegal immigrants. So now we're putting those people over our own citizens. Again, compassionate care, we could have done that on the way from the Darien Gap. We could have stopped UN from moving people, but now they're here, and so now we're trying to make it where, oh, we've got to take care of them. That compassion play, that big heart play that the Democrats are pushing is actually destroying our own population, along with the fact that we should have handled this prior to crossing the border. That's where it comes back to people, I think, moving towards Trump. It said that in 2021, when they laxed these policies, and of course, we all know that with Biden saying, hey, you know, basically the border's open. I don't think he realized how much of a problem that was going to be and how much it was going to affect the cities. Well, now I think that's why you're seeing this big push like Super Tuesday yesterday, and the fact of the national polls. Trump is actually beating Biden and really at the strongest he's ever been, even 2016 and 2020. Now, for national polls, especially for those left-leaning polls and those establishment polls who don't like Trump, to call him the front runner, to me, I think what they're trying to do is push Biden out. But the best case scenario for Republicans is to have Trump go against Biden again, because Biden is looking weak. That brings me to the third story. Biden's faltering even more and more. Now, you saw him on the border situation when him and Trump both went to the border. You know, Trump's high-fiving people. He's giving pizza and hamburgers out and talking to the Border Patrol. Biden is like feeble and have his hand on people as they walk around as he tries to navigate a walk. One of those things they said yesterday when they interviewed him after Super Tuesday is that they looked at a Trump and Biden rematch. And they said, how do you feel about the national polls when, you know, Trump is looking stronger than you? His words were, well, I just won 5. Well, remember, Super Tuesday is way bigger than 5. Where in the world did he get the number 5 from? Yes, he won every contest because pretty much the only person running against him was Marianne Williamson on the Democratic side. But the man doesn't even know how many, basically, primaries were yesterday for Super Tuesday. I promise you it was way more than 5. So the sad thing is this man is deteriorating before our eyes. Now, the best case, again, for us is that he faces Trump because it makes Trump even look better. Trump is not, you know, the most perfect candidate. He's flawed. We understand that. But for him to have the power he has now, it looks great because Biden is looking weaker and weaker. Now, I don't want to see the next 8 months of what that means for us having to go through 2024 because there's, from internal struggles here in America to external struggles across the world. Biden has put us in tons of conflicts. One of those migrant crisis conflicts were when he lacks the policy in 2021, which is causing for more UN funding, which is causing for more UN to send people through the Darien Gap to our southern border, which is causing for more the homelessness issue. Do you see? It's just a cause and effect. It is a domino effect that the Biden administration has done that has made all these situations happen. So for all these people in the city that are still voting for the Democrats or Biden, you need to really look at your news cycle and say, okay, why am I voting for this guy? No matter if I like Trump or not, Biden has caused a lot of this, and now it's causing veterans to be on the street. I imagine you know a veteran. I imagine you know that they have fought and struggled for our country. Why do you think that they should be on the roads and on the streets and not getting the care they need, while these people who are not even from America, who can't even assimilate and can't even speak American, who came here illegally and has been brought here for a purpose and an agenda by the UN, why do they deserve that safety and that care when our veterans are not even getting that? Number 4, going along with the same primary situation, Nikki Haley bows out. The only 2 primaries she won in this whole situation, only 2 primaries that anyone won other than Trump, was D.C. and Vermont. Vermont being Bernie Sanders' place, so a big socialist place, and plus it's an open primary, so it means anybody, quote unquote, can vote for the Republican if they just say they're a Republican. And then she won the swamp of D.C. Both of those really played actually better in the hands of Trump, that he lost a socialist style voting bloc and then lost the fact of D.C. swamp. It makes Trump actually have a little bit better of a saying, you know what, at least I lost that, not Texas, or at least I lost that, not Mississippi, or so forth. He won every other place. So now it's set up to the fact that everybody is out other than Trump and Biden. Now, of course, you have RFK, I understand. Yes, you have, some of these other little parties that's like the Cornel West and all that, but ultimately it's going to come down to Trump and Biden. I think Trump at this point, again, remember, I don't think the Tulsi Gabbards and the RFK should be VP. I think they're both a little too liberal. I think he needs to have a conservative on the ticket with him, or a populist conservative, or a libertarian. So I hope that he pulls from the conservative side of the aisle for that. But here's what I would do if I was Trump. Again, we made a comment about this. I would be meeting with Tulsi Gabbard like he's been doing. I'd be meeting with RFK. I would bring them into my administration. I'd give them very good jobs, if it be with HHS with RFK, or if it be with Secretary of State with diplomacy with RFK, or if it be with something really good for Tulsi Gabbard again. I would make sure that I would bring them in, because then it ultimately looks better on you. It looks like you're trying to bring in a part of that party that has been left from Biden's situation. And leftists have left RFK and Tulsi Gabbard's, which will pull a lot of that independent vote, which would help win the party and win the goals. Trump is already more centrist than what I am as a complete conservative. But I do think that if he brought somebody like a true conservative on the VP side, I think that would help him with his core, but then also bring in the independents with, someone like a Tulsi or a RFK, not as VP, but as a major cabinet position. It looks good. It makes everything more unified. I think that would help. I think it would help basically secure the win for basically Trump. Now, again, that depends on the free election. That depends on what happens in the next coming months. But the best case scenario is Trump building a team around him of conservatives and independents and allowing the left to keep Biden as their fearless leader, because the man is lost. He's definitely got some medical problems and mental issues, but then he's also a flawed candidate because our borders overflooded and people are seeing the damage that is caused worldwide by Biden's policies. Now that brings me to the 5th and final headline for today. There is a scarcity with American currency, with our dollar. Now I always tell you, you need to keep some cash. You need to keep some dollar bills for sure, because they're, like, for instance, the Tesla situation with eco-terrorist group, attack them in Germany. We saw the situation with AT&T the other day. We saw the situation with Meta yesterday. When we see that things can happen technological, it makes me say I still want some tangible goods. I want some bartering goods. I want some assets that have value that does not depend on digitized currency. Now, that brings a part of the story up, and I'm going to tell you my pros and cons with this. Gold and Bitcoin are at record highs right now for the year, and really for the last few years. What that means is people are saying, I want something different than just cash. I want something different than just our personal currency in America. So I don't know if that plays well, because I told you there's a lot of other governments starting to buy Bitcoin and gold too, and moving away from U.S. currency. For instance, India the other day made a lot of comments saying that they're wanting to buy the supplies and wanting to do do import and exports with rupees over doing it with the dollar bill. That will hurt us worse. So there's two things. Encouragement that yes, there is some other currencies that could still benefit America. Sadly, the dollar is going to hurt because of it. Now, there's two things I would tell you to look at when it comes to Bitcoin and gold. Gold, I'm going to always go towards gold if I'm looking at something that's going to hold value, because again, gold is valuable across the world, no matter if we have power, grid, war, or nothing else. It has been a threadbare historical landmark of currency and worth. Now, when people say, well, gold hadn't really gained, I mean, it was 2,000 a few years ago, now it's about 2,300, 2,400. Look at Bitcoin, it was 0 and now it's 62. I don't want speculative, and I don't want volatility, and I sure don't want a digitized currency for all my wealth to be in. So even though Bitcoin's growing, even though a lot of people are investing in it, personally, it's just not for me. Remember, if you don't tangibly hold it, you don't tangibly own it. I know I get tons of kickback from these Bitcoin people who love Bitcoin. I'm not against you owning it. I'm just saying, if you put all your wealth in that and all of a sudden the grid goes down, or there's some kind of major event cyber-wise, you have nothing. And I promise you, if I go to my local BP or Texaco to buy some gas, they don't want my Bitcoin. Now, the pushback is, oh, well, they don't want your gold either. I understand that. But if I have the gold, then I have the ways to borrow whatever the currency may be. I have the ways to have assets. I have the ways to barter, because I have something that is worth value across the world, no matter what the situation is. So, yes, I love the fact that Bitcoin and gold are pulling up. It makes our currency struggle, but also it helps us push against the BRICS currencies and some of the other currencies across the world that is trying to manipulate the dollar. So I like the fact that Bitcoin and gold are both going up. However, I would tell you to really be cautious of Bitcoin, because even though it's going up, you can ride the wave. Just remember, there is a crash at the end of the wave. The wave will go down, or the fact of, if the grid goes down, what value do you really have in Bitcoin? So I really push that button a lot. I preach that a lot. But if it was me, I'm going to stick to gold. And having barterable assets such as food and security, those things matter to me more than what, Bitcoin or some kind of digital crypto does. Because again, I got to worry about the exchanges. I have to worry about what the government's doing with ETFs on Bitcoin. I have to worry about a lot of big players in Bitcoin that I cannot control. Well, if I tangibly have this gold bullion or this gold coin, I tangibly control it, and it doesn't change. I have that in my possession. So that means the world to me. So I'm going to stick to stuff that I can tangibly hold for value. So 5 headlines we talked about dealing with the fact of a circle of mass migration is actually caused by UN and the U.S. backing the UN and not holding their feet to the fire. Remember, NATO, UN, all these world organizations, all these NGOs, it's really America's agendas by the upper elite. If we would learn to cut some of the funding of all this would dissipate. So I blame America, I blame the Uniparty, because a lot of this is all caused by them. The UN cannot do what they're doing in the Darien Gap and the mass migration issue to get them to our border if we would quit funding them and call their hand at it. But sadly, we have a administration that is literally backing it. So that's dangerous. That's causing the issues with fentanyl. That's causing the issues with the veterans being homeless. That's causing the issues with our currency. Everything is a problem that is caused by a domino effect of one situation, which is a bad leader. Not saying that Trump is going to be phenomenal, but if you compare the 4 years of Trump and the 4 years of Biden, take out 2020 because you can't count it. It has nothing to do with anything. It was a bad decision on Trump's part to do the 2 weeks to trust Fauci. Yeah, I hear all that. But when you talk about the fact of how good America was during the time of Trump versus Biden, I think there is just a non-event and a non-argument that Biden can do a better job than Trump. especially in his case where he thinks he won 5 elections yesterday. I feel sorry for him. I really do. I feel like there's probably some nurse that's like patting him on the back saying, come on, sweetie, let's go, because the man is completely lost. And the best case scenario, again, for Trump is the fact that he just won a Supreme Court victory, which was huge. He just basically got the Republican nod because Haley finally stepped out. Don't even know why she was in there still. But if Biden stays as the one that he has to go against, I believe that's the best case for him. I just start worried about my team and building a great team and ride the wave as it keeps on going and hopefully getting back into the White House. We've got to have some changes. If we don't have some changes, be ready for internal war or external war on U.S. soil or with U.S. troops going somewhere, because that's exactly what this administration is wanting. Guys, let me know your thoughts on all these conversations that we had today. I hope that you have a phenomenal day. Be careful in this weather. I know we've got some bad weather coming through the south this week. God bless. Happy homestead.
This old town, just leave it all behind. The river's gonna cry.